and welcome to the June meeting of the Raleigh Historic Development Commission. I'm Nick Fountain. I'm the chair for today, and I'll ask the staff to call the roll.
Nick Fountain.
Here.
Kay Webb.
Here.
Katie Pate.
Here.
Travis Bailey. I see him.
Yeah, I see him.
Yeah.
He waved.
Ian Dunn.
Here.
Rashay Height is on her way. Heather Leah is excused. Harold Millette.
Here.
Janine McAuliffe.
Here.
Don Reese.
Here.
Susan Singer.
Here.
Gaston Williams.
Here.
Okay, great. So let's see, working way down the agenda. The first thing is a motion to approve the agenda, and Gaston Williams makes that motion. Ian Dunn seconds the motion. Any discussion? All in favor signify by raising your hand. And that, I see all the hands, motion carries. That's unanimous. And now I need a similar motion to approve the minutes of the May 18, 2020 meeting. Janine McAuliffe makes that motion, a second by John Reese. Any discussion? All in favor signify by raising your hand. All the hands went up again. Thank you, folks. And that carries. So the first thing on the agenda today is a rezoning matter, 119, 115 North Boylan, and I'll turn to staff to explain the matter, and then I'll call on Matt Clem.
Hi, everyone. This is Colette. So the rezoning case that you have in front of you today is for 115 and 119 North Boylan Avenue. It is in the North Boylan NCOD. It is not in a National Register or local historic district, and it is not individually designated on the National Register. And this was something that came up at the executive meeting that some of the members thought that they wanted to hear a little bit more about the pending application. So this is just an introductory meeting to determine if you would like to make formal comments. So there's not been a staff report prepared like usual. We're going to start off today with Matt Clem. He is the case planner, and he'll give you an introduction, and then we have applicants here as well.
Okay, so Matt, go ahead.
Okay, good morning, Chair Fountain and members of the RHTC. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we're looking at the rezoning map here, a request to rezone just about half an acre from an OX office residential mixed use district with a 3-story height limit and a detached frontage. The site is zoned with the North Boylan NCOD. The request is to rezone those properties, maintaining the base office and mixed use district, office mixed use district, adding additional stories to 7 stories, mapping an urban limited frontage. There are zoning conditions that we'll cover later, and then also mapping the transit overlay district. And this item will be before the Planning Commission next Tuesday on June 22nd. Next slide. So here we are at the corner of Jones and Boylan Street in the southwest quadrant there. You can see St. Mary's School in the block to the left. Block to the south is Hillsborough Street. To the east, Glenwood Avenue. And to the north, up towards Peace Street. Next slide. So the future land use map for this site and this larger area is identified as office and residential mixed use. And what this policy does in the comprehensive plan is it recommends what zoning district should be mapped here. And the requested office mixed use zoning district is consistent with this policy. This is the urban format, which recommends various frontage types. The urban limited frontage is consistent with the guidance of the urban format, being in the city's downtown and within the core transit area. The urban limited frontage requires buildings be closer to the sidewalk to encourage walkability. And so that is consistent with these designations as well. Next slide. The number of zoning conditions. The first prohibits a certain number of uses. The second zoning condition requires that rooftop mechanical equipment be screened beyond the minimum requirements of the code. The third and fourth conditions require screening and design elements to treat light spillage coming from the parking structures. These are just summaries. The full set of zoning conditions for 3 and 4 have some pretty detailed specifications on what can and can't be done. In fact, those zoning conditions were modeled after a presentation that the Urban Design Center, some of our colleagues in the planning department created a list of standard zoning conditions that could be used to address light spillage and other screening issues with parking structures. So it came from them. And that's my presentation. Happy to answer any questions that you have. Please let me know how I can be helpful.
All right, thank you. But before we go to Mr. Coleman, Mr. Clem, let me ask you one. Well, first of all, in general, our concerns, aside from preservation broadly, are typically with height and massing, not with use. So there's about the 7-story piece raised questions in the executive committee. And so I thought there was history indicating that there would be less height. There would be more height on St. Mary's and Glenwood, less height in between. Can you tell me whether that is not the way it is in the UDO or what?
Yeah, that's a great question. The best way to understand what the height guidance is for rezoning in the city is a combination of looking at the future land use map, which we looked at, which is office mixed use, and then looking at a table in the comprehensive plan called LU2. It is the recommended heights table. And so how height guidance is structured in the plan is by looking at what designations on the future land use map and what context is the piece of property situated in. And there are 5 contexts. 2 of them have to do with transit station areas. The other 3 contexts are described as edge, general, or core transit. This site is a core transit context based on the definitions of the comprehensive plan, which recommend a range of 2 to 7 stories of building height. And that is because the area is located within the core of a mixed-use center of about 30 acres or more, fronting along a corridor program for high-capacity or frequent bus transit. And it also says in employment areas, taller buildings may be contemplated. So that is basically the way to figure out what type of height is recommended where.
Okay, thank you for that. Mm-hmm. Mr. Coleman, do you want to say anything to us here?
Mr. Fountain, thank you, Chair Fountain, and board members. Good morning. Toby Coleman for the applicant. I am at 150 Fayetteville Street. I guess I'll put it this way. I have a presentation to the extent that there's questions. I focused in on specifically sort of looking at this neighborhood conservation overlay district. I think trying to get to the questions that I think Chair Fountain raised about massing. Long story short, and I can go through the presentation if you want, but I will skip that because it's early in the morning if you guys don't need it. But long story short, this neighborhood conservation overlay district was created in 1998, associated with a neighborhood plan that is no longer in existence. As Matt Clem just outlined, the current comprehensive plan and the city policies for this area have changed. The neighborhood conservation overlay district was created in 1998 and associated with this neighborhood plan, and it's basically got a series of zoning requirements, including one that limits height. And so this rezoning is requesting that cap on height be lifted. I've spent a fair amount of time looking at the history of this NCOD, and frankly, there's not a lot out there that I've been able to dig up yet, other than just council passing it. I also took a look at the history of this neighborhood. As far as the height goes, I'm not sure that height was a major concern in this area in 1998. Instead, one of the other major requirements of this conservation overlay district, and again, not a historic conservation overlay district, just a zoning tool called a neighborhood conservation overlay district. One of the other major things in this conservation overlay district was a prohibition on parking in front between the building and the street. I've gone back and looked at the development in this area. Obviously, this is an area that's been around and had development for a long time in Raleigh. What I found is that between 1961 and 1998, when the Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District was enacted, almost all of the new buildings, I think there's 14 new developments, almost all of the developments had parking in the front. They're suburban type development. And so it appears, based on that contextual information, that what this neighborhood conservation overlay was trying to do was preserve a pocket of pre-World War II urban development and ensure that it didn't get overrun by what was then sort of suburban development with parking in the front, sort of lower slung things. This rezoning is consistent with that vision. I'll also note that while there is height, as you noted, on St. Mary's Street, Chair Fountain, and on Glenwood, there's also height on North Boylan. In fact, there's 2 7-story apartment buildings just 2 blocks to the north of this building. There's also the one Glenwood and Tower 2 along Hillsborough, just a block south. And on this very block, which is bounded by Hillsborough, St. Mary's Street, it's the 100 block of Boylan, so it's North Boylan, West Jones to the north, St. Mary's Street to the west, Hillsborough to the south. There is, in 1980, the Raleigh Housing Authority built an 8-story tower, which is catty corner to these properties. So there's already a tall building on this block. So again, I do have a presentation, but I think I probably talked enough. So if you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Sorry, I had myself muted. Mr. Dixon, do you want to speak, or do you want to wait and see if there are questions? And I asked the same of Corey Bates from New City.
This is Corey. I'll be here if there's any questions that come up. Otherwise,
Okay.
let you go.
All right, thank you for that. So members of the commission, the point of this is to decide, first of all, do we have more questions? And second of all, do we want to comment on this rezoning for one reason or another? And so I'll open it to a discussion, and if there are further questions, we'll call on folks. If the thought is that we don't need to be involved with it in any way at all, then we'll move on. But we flagged it in the exec committee so that everybody could have a look and weigh in. So Travis Bailey, I think I saw your hand come off the steering wheel.
So my question was about, have we ever commented on something that was just within an NCOD? Because it's not located in anything that we would typically regulate.
I agree with that. Colette or Tanya, can you comment on what the commission has done over time?
This is Colette. So yes, there have been times when you have commented on zoning applications that were not in any way designated as historic. However, in most of those situations, it's either been directly adjacent to a historic district or a landmark. There is a landmark a little bit further south on the property, on the block of this property, but it's farther than what we would typically send to you for comment.
So the property that is a landmark is the barn with the dance.
It's the carriage house.
Carriage house on St. Mary Street back through the block from this property.
Right.
Right. Okay. Travis, does that answer your question? You have other questions? All right. Thanks. Anybody else?
Real quick.
Susan Singer.
I guess it sounds to me like it's taking into account what this area zoning is supposed to be, and I'm kind of wondering why we flagged it. I'm not sure I heard clearly. Maybe we did discuss, but what was your concern in the executive board meeting? That the height, even though there's other buildings of that height, is this an environmental concern? Or I just don't know.
No, the concern was going to whether to go to 7 stories or not on this block. There's on Boylan itself. I think as was commented by Mr. Coleman, you got to go a couple blocks north to closer down to the bottom of Tucker Street to get the height that they're talking about. And so the question is, do we think we ought to weigh in and because there might be a tendency to preserve some of these other pre-war structures or low-rise type development in this area, or is it time to let it go? I guess in a nutshell, Susan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Chair Fountain, if I may clarify,
Yeah.
This is Matt with city planning staff. So there, within the block that the rezoning request is made in, there is a building of 8 stories of height. And then just on the southern block on Hillsborough Street, there are multiple 10-story buildings just about a 10th of a mile away to the south. And then southeast, 1 block over on Glenwood is the construction of a 7-story hotel. So just clarify if Toby's comments were misleading. There are buildings of 7 stories and taller within just a block or so of the rezoning site.
Right. I'm familiar with the 1980 building on St. Mary Street, as well as with the carriage house, and also the historic properties that behind the Char Grill and the like, as well as what's going on over on Glenwood. But so thank you for that, Matt. Let's see, Katie, I believe you had your hand up a moment ago.
I did. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, so Susan, to kind of respond to why we brought this up, I'm the one who brought it to the executive committee in the first place because I saw that one of the buildings, 115, is currently used as apartments. I think it's split up into 6 to 8 apartments. And I feel that, first of all, under other circumstances, we might consider one or both of these buildings for historic landmark designation. And then secondly, taking away one of those buildings would reduce the affordable housing density in this neighborhood, which was a concern to me. So I didn't know if the larger commission did want to comment on it. I don't feel super strongly either way, but I did think it was worth bringing to the rest of the commission for those reasons.
Okay, thanks. Further comment or discussion?
Just very quickly, in this block area, the relative height, is this now going to be, would now be that it's not taller than the carriage house, right? It's 3 stories less than the carriage house?
Well, the carriage house is essentially 2, I would say, Gaston, but the
apartment building, whatever it's called.
Yeah, no, it's like 8 or something like that. It's plenty tall.
So it's probably the tallest in this block, and this proposal would be the second tallest other than the steeple on the church or whatever.
Yeah, that's probably fair. One way is to think about what is in this block, and another way to think of it is what is in this Boylan streetscape.
Gotcha. I was just curious as to the relative heights of all the buildings as this new one will be put in.
All right, Susan Singer.
Yeah, this will be quick, Nick. I just want to thank you, Katie, for explaining that. I think this kind of harkens back to a conversation we consistently have been having. It's about how do we or should we weigh in on the not just the architectural structure, but and which I know is our purview, but also kind of the way a neighborhood exists. And you know, if the building was designed to be affordable housing and now it's not, is that our purview? Doesn't sound like it is. It sounds like that's a city zoning and planning issue. Affordable housing and reconstruction is. So we're talking specifically about height, and I guess I don't see that as an issue, but I do think, Katie, your point is well taken. And we don't weigh in on those things, I guess, is what I've been told repeatedly. So that's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Any further discussion?
No.
Then if there's no further discussion, then I think I will ask, is anyone prepared to make a motion that we comment in some way? If there's no motion, then we take no action and we'll move on with the other items on the agenda. So the question is whether there is a desire to comment for what weight it may have. All right, I'm not seeing anybody putting a hand up expressing an intention to make a motion. And so with that, Katie, I think that we've had the discussion. These folks have been good enough to show up, and but we're not motivated to get into the issue outside of the stuff we already are dealing with. So anyway, so Matt, thank you for tuning in, and Toby, same to you, and we appreciate the input, and we'll stand clear, and we'll move on to the next items on the agenda. And the next item on the agenda, we drop down to budget, if according to my agenda. And so, Tanya, I'll turn to a discussion on the budget.
Great. Great. Thank you, Nick. I do not have a presentation. This is just a visual presentation. So I will just talk to you about the two different budgets that you have. As you know, you are both a 501c3 nonprofit as well as a city council appointed commission. You've not had a lot of activity in your nonprofit accounts of late, mostly using it for pass-through for the revolving loan fund. At the moment, you have approximately $6,300 in two different accounts. You've got a checking account and a money market account, and that is what is remaining in your nonprofit budget. From the city council appointed board standpoint, your funding comes through is part of the overall city budget. You've got a number of you've got a line item in the planning and development department, and so you get annual allocations, and then with certain contracts they roll over. So the city council just adopted the 2022 budget on June 7th. And so the numbers I'm going to talk about are what were proposed. I haven't heard that what was proposed by the department got changed, so I'm fairly confident that these numbers are accurate, but I couldn't find the level of detail I was looking for, but I am quite confident in this. So your overall.
Let me interrupt.
Yes,
Let me
sir.
interrupt a minute. The reason that this is on here, folks, is that it occurred to me that one of the areas that maybe we hadn't done as well, or I hadn't done as well as should have, is we, though it isn't directly our money, the notion of how much funding is available, that we all ought to have a general awareness of what the city has allocated and what and what planning has allocated to these purposes, because it informs our ability to do research reports and all the other things. And there may be vehicles to move money from one line item to another line item, depending on what you all see as the mission and goals and needs and opportunities. And so so we haven't had this discussion in months, to my knowledge. And so I'm the reason that we're having this little bit of educational piece in here. Plus, we have the new budget coming out because we're getting close to the fiscal year for the city anyway. So Tanya, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I thought I'd give some context.
No, I appreciate that. That's excellent. So you do have funding set aside for legal services. You know, those of you who are on COA are familiar with Francis Raspberry. So there is specific funding set aside for that, but not including the legal services money. You've got you're allocated approximately $56,000 annually, and a small amount of it, relatively speaking, is set aside for the computer operations and access information. So that's the annual contract for RaleighHistoric.org, and then paying for the domain name services. And then there is a travel and training budget, which is down a little bit. This year, we were asked to reduce some line items as part of the tightening the budget because of COVID expenses over the last budget year. And so at the moment, that is $5,200, and that pays for training for commissioners and to attend, for example, the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions Forum, which happens every 2 years, or the Preservation North Carolina Annual Conference. Sometimes there are webinars that need to be paid for. There's also the National Trust Conference. So there are opportunities each year to get for you all to be trained in, what you're doing. And, it's not always enough to pay for everybody to go. So you typically look at, who's never been to one, who's available, and all of that kind of thing. Then the bulk of the money is in, let me back up. Then there's also a fund set aside, $9,000, that covers the, historic landmark plaques. Each time there's a designation, you purchase a plaque, and then we have to pay for somebody to install the plaques. And then also some of them get put on concrete bases, and so we pay for that, and other sort of miscellaneous contractual services as has come up over the years. There used to be a separate line item for paying for within your specific budget to cover, printing services and the events. That money is still available, but it is part of the overall Urban Design Center budget. So, there is money for, once we're back having in-person events again, to pay for rental fees, or, if we're purchasing food for an event, there is money for that, as well as, if there are going to be any actual physical mailings, there is also a budget to pay for those items. The big chunk of money is $39,500, and that covers any community awareness programs, research reports, whether it's individual designation reports, can also cover the hiring the professional to write the blurbs for the RaleighHistoric.org for each of the new landmark designations, and then any other projects that are coming up. And the for example, and this is the LGBTQ historic context is paid for out of these funds. Now that money, because it's under contract, will not be coming out of the new fiscal year, but is still the 2021 budget year. It is also intended for when neighborhoods come forward either to request a study for either National Register designation or for Historic Overlay District designation. This is also where we applied for a grant to do the African American Historic Resources Study. The matching portion of that grant will also come out of these funds. And that's what it's used for. There is the flexibility between the line item that has the 39,000 and the line item that has 9,000 to move them a little bit, as long as it's related to your mission. That's not an issue. I can tell you that staff has been speaking with 2 different neighborhoods, and I anticipate there's going to be a request to do some neighborhood studies. They need to, and when that happens, we will have them come to you and make their request personally. And I'm still waiting to hear if you got the grant. Any questions?
Gaston?
Real quick, and without getting too far down the minutia, a couple things. Is there any specific line item? This is kind of like the bottom. This is our city allotment of money. This is pure city money or whatever money.
Yes.
But we have the ability in the bylaws to raise money, right?
Yes. That
Okay.
would go into your nonprofit account.
Okay, and we have the ability, if we had a project that wasn't budgeted and didn't have a way to pay for it and didn't whatever, we could actually raise funds lawfully.
You absolutely, you can do that lawfully. You can also, choose to go ask city council for more money.
All right, and we not in the not too distant past, once we sell Lestron, we talked about how relatively ineffective the small amount of money we have, even though we had trouble offloading, we'll have trouble offloading Lestron, it would be in our grand scheme of things. Real quick question. Is there any specific line item in the existing budgets anywhere about our issue of having to rebuild our website somewhere, somehow?
No, there is not.
Okay. Well, we all need to keep that in mind. I have a slightly different recollection than some others, but it's going to be an expense anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000. So we just
right, and that will need to come out of your nonprofit budget, because the city does have its own website. If you wanted to have it to move entirely under the city's umbrella.
Would we have to, I'll shut up in a second. Would we have to use their resource, their technical, would we have to use their skilled resources to do that? Or can they just be the host?
Oh, they would be the host. If you choose to not manage it as your nonprofit, then it can, you can have multiple commission pages on the website, on the city's website, and we would work through our departmental communications team, who would then, of course, work with the city's communication department to make sure we're following all the rules and regulations for the city's website.
Okay, thank you.
Susan Singer?
I have a quick question. Gaston, I think you've made some really valuable points, and I think you're on the communications committee. When we get to the place we know we need to redo our website, I think part of that analysis should be whether we now move it under the city's website or we continue with our own. And that would be a quick analysis that we do, and it'll change the cost of it and how we operate. So I think that's a really important point, and the website does need to be improved. So count me in if you get to that place.
And I think we all agree, despite our good work on the side, if we don't have a strong, modern, up-to-date presence on the web, we're in the dark. We might as well not be doing anything. I mean, it's just the entry to our good work.
Right.
John Reese?
Catch me up, because I thought that when we had our retreat meeting, we discussed this whole thing, and I thought that we had allocated some funds from our account to update the website. Did I mess that up?
I think the answer is that we had to patch the current website just to keep it on life support until we could get to the decision on which way we were going to go forward. And so in some sense, that money was thrown away on a deficient vehicle, but it was what we had to do to get from point A to point B. And so now we'll be looking to where do we go from here? To what extent how much is it worth to us to be able to control content a little better and be a little more timely in getting things done than may be the case if everything is run through the city, because the city in general doesn't go fast. And so there will be all those discussions, and there's much to be said for the city's structure, but a little bit of independence is handy sometimes as well. So, Tanya, did I say that right in terms of the patch on the existing website?
Yes, you did.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions about the budget? Janine McAuliffe.
Sorry, I'm going to comment again on this website. Just wondering, because I've seen this in discussions for, I feel like, years. And I just wonder if we need to sort of do a pull-out group to kind of move that forward. Just because we used to have some folks on the commission that would speak and knew far more about kind of the pros and cons of these options than I do. I don't know kind of who is here now that might be the right combination of that. And I'm happy to help if I could be of help, but just thinking that I don't know what the mechanism is to get this moving, but
well, we have just a point of information on the Community Awareness Committee. Heather's chairing it and Travis is on it. I'm on it, and we have some non-commissioned people on it, and it would logically fall under that committee. But I think this is such a important task that we might want to broaden it up a little bit and have it a subcommittee of that committee, because let it burn up brightly for a brief amount of time and can be very distracting to their overall work. And I think it needs to be a broader group. And we have all those technical people on the commission that may not be on that committee, but could be for specific ad hoc thing.
So Janine, when we, yesterday, the nomination committee met and Kay and I were working with Gaston on what the new committees might look like. And so Gaston's got to be in touch with numbers of you about what committee and where he's got you penciled in. And we were taking advantage of all these candidates we had for new appointments. And and we ought to find out today who is the newest appointee, because there was one still hanging. But it would seem to me that it would be up to Gaston and you all in discussions next month when we pull out the new committees and how that's going to be, whether to set up an ad hoc committee just for this. Because we have an ad hoc committee for the restaurant, we have an ad hoc so that we can monitor things at Dick's. And it may be this needs to be a special project as an ad hoc committee, and Gaston can, and with your help, can get that figured out. But it absolutely needs to move. It needs to move one way or the other.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Sounds good.
Okay,
We'll kind of survey the commission once it's firmly established and make, my tendency is make an ad hoc committee. I just think it's nice to be involved in something that has a start and a finish, and it's a task done. It's more invigorating.
you're right about that. Okay, any other discussion on the budget? All right, now, I will say that we're going to be coming out of this pandemic. We've had a year and a half with almost no live activities. It may be that in terms of community awareness and in terms of this budget, we'll have to have renewed effort for some of you to go to the NAPC so that you've been at least once, maybe before your time on the commission ends, and the PNC annual meetings. And then you need to remember that we have from time to time when we felt threatened with growth and demolitions and tear downs that we have brought in speakers from across the country and put on special events with invites and the like. And so you're going to need to be thinking about those things as we begin to come out of this pandemic as well. So with that, unless there's something else on the budget, we'll move to the committee reports. And the first one is the Lustron House. And let's see, Tanya, I'll make a few comments and then you can straighten me out. We've got this potential buyer. The buyer is researching cost and the like, but there hasn't been anything new that I know of in the last month in that regard from that potential buyer. And so that's sort of where we are there. Tanya, anything else that you can report?
Nothing new.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, let me back up. Anybody who is out and about in downtown Raleigh, please drive by. We do want to keep an eye out on it. We did make a request based on a neighbor report to have additional police drive-bys because there's been some activity because it is a roofed open space, and now that the storage container is on site, it just makes it a very welcoming place for people to hang out. So just more activity, and also just look to see if there's any trash. We are on the list for getting yard maintenance monthly. But anything we can do to help the site continue to appear loved and cared for will be helpful, for getting it sold, but also be very, very neighborly.
Yeah. So let's see, Gaston, you rode by and checked on the trash and the rumors that there were drug deals going on and that sort of thing. Do you want to comment?
Well, it wasn't in terrible shape. Apparently, there's a shelter type building nearby that has had some interruption of its services. So the neighbors reported it being used for get-togethers of a commercial type. But wasn't any evidence of it, and it was in pretty good shape. I picked up trash. The trash can needs to be taken to the street. The neighbors who keep an eye on this are immediately to the right, the modern house. It's a young couple. And then on the left is a rental across the street. I didn't make contact, but I left contact information with all those people to let us know as soon as they see something that needs to be addressed, so we wouldn't let it languish. And overall, it didn't look in bad shape. We did discuss whether to get some solar activated motion lights or something to light up the inside so that it wasn't as attractive in the dark.
Okay, yeah, all right, thank you for that. Now, Tanya, where are we on freeing up the loan money with the city?
Just the memorandum of agreement with between RHDC, Preservation North Carolina, and the city needs to be updated, and I will check with the city attorney's office again.
Yeah, and as I recall, it was on some lawyer's desk a month ago. Is that still the case?
It is. The last thing I heard was a question about if PNC had any comments, and I sent those on, and I've not heard back since, so I will ask again.
Okay. All right, they'll move on then. Kay Webb, do you want to say anything about nominations today?
Yes, the nominations committee has submitted its recommendations to the city council. On June the 1st, city council approved reappointment of Heather Leah, Catherine Pate, and Gaston Williams. They also approved the appointment of Curtis Casefang. On today's agenda, there are 2 nominees that are being voted on, Sandy Feaster and Bridget Phillips. And so the person who receives the highest number of votes will be appointed to the commission. As Nick said, we've been working with the new incoming officers, making some suggestions about committee placements so that we can make best use of those persons who are on the commission, as well as those persons who have indicated an interest who are non-commissioners who could be non-commissioned members of committees. So we have completed our work for the year. This concludes the report of the nominations committee.
Well, and I think that the truth is Kay has done a masterful job with nominations for at least 2 years. And the fact that numbers of you are even on this screen at the moment are because of her work. And she has to be commended. We wouldn't have got all this done without Kay. And so thank you, Kay, for everything that you have done. And then we were thinking yesterday that we got 2 nominees because the second spot vacancy got jammed up in city council because we weren't sure exactly what was wrong to begin with, but it turned out that best we could tell, the mayor had concern that we had too many people from Oakwood and didn't want any, and that turned out to be the glitch. Curtis Casefang had, to circle back, Curtis Casefang had earlier, when he was on the commission in the past, he had become identified with the big dispute about the so-called modernist house on Euclid. And so we didn't know whether that was what was the issue, with some hangover from that old dispute. But it turned out that wasn't it. It was that both nominees we put forward were from the Oakwood area, and the mayor thought that we needed to back up and look at diversity and the like. And so we did a memo, or I dictated a memo. We sent it to them all, outlining all the ways in which we had diversity in gender, in race, in backgrounds, of educational backgrounds, all the ways that we were looking to have the talents we needed for the various committees. And we underscored that we needed the experience that Curtis would bring because he'd already had 6 years on the COA. And so that one went on through, and then we highlighted 2 names for the other spot because it was in nominations. It could have been sort of gone either way on those 2 anyway. But so we're hopeful that when the city picks one of these 2 today, that then we want to hang on to the other person. But depending on which one goes which way, that will have an impact on bringing on the other non-commissioned member as to which committee to keep both of those persons interested and active. So that's what's going on that end. If there's nothing else in the nomination area, then I'll turn to Ian and research.
Not too much this month. We did have 2 requests for review. one house on Kittrell Drive, which is in Anderson Heights, which is an FHA house, and 1322 Mordecai, which I believe is a direct result of the demolition on Sycamore. These people were contacted several times in the past and were not interested, if I remember correctly. But now they are interested in landmarking. Apart from that, that's it.
All right. So, Ian or Tanya, do you want to talk about the Zoom meeting that we had with the Mordecai people, and the which again would be a research thing if that materializes?
I wasn't able to make it to that meeting, so Tanya can speak to that.
Sure. The Mordecai CAC has created a historic preservation committee, and we staff and Nick and I think Janine and Travis were there, held a meeting to speak with some folks to talk about what the requirements of a historic overlay district would be, and pros and cons, and what their next steps would be as far as speaking to their neighborhood. And so there's a possibility that a request to update their National Register nomination will be coming forward. I have been invited to speak at a neighborhood meeting on, I think it's July 20th. Again, that'll be virtual, but so they will be inviting their neighbors, so it'll be more than just their small group. And there were a lot of good questions. There seems to be some interest, but as with any case where neighborhoods looking at a historic overlay district, it will be dependent on whether or not the majority of property owners are interested in the need for a certificate of appropriateness in order to receive the protection that is available through the HOD. I thought it was a good conversation.
Yeah, it was a good conversation, and these things are usually triggered by some teardown. And unfortunately, too often people wait too late. You need to catch it at the right time where people are willing to accept the burdens in return for the rewards of designation. And if you get too many properties controlled by developers, they don't have any preservation interest, and it becomes a challenge. And quickly, Tanya, before we move on, a while ago you mentioned that there was a second neighborhood. Is that has also got at least some discussion going? Was that Cameron Park or what?
No, this is Starmount.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. And so it's similar. You're going to have a meeting with them or whatever?
I think so. I need to reach out. I have spoken with one person, and then I received an email from a committee that's been formed asking for a report, and I just need to follow up with their next steps. So before the commission would vote to use your funds to do a report, you asked for some confidence of interest from the neighborhood. So I need to meet with the committee and tell them next steps and all of that.
So some of you may remember that we went through this exercise with Anderson Heights a few years ago, and the folks don't always understand the process, but what has to be done is that a study of the relevant area. An area has to be defined, and then a study done to figure out how much of the historic fabric is still left, and is it so chewed up already that there's not enough critical mass to make it worth trying to create a district. And but so the next step for Mordecai would be whether to move forward with something like that, and the same thing would happen whether there's enough interest in Starmount to cause that to take place. And so so that's where we come in. And of course, some of the people will think we are on one side or the other, but we're actually there. Sure, we want to preserve things, but we also got to be objective about whether there's enough fabric left in any of these neighborhoods. And those of us that have been involved with Oberlin certainly see what happens when you've got one that has lots of holes and chunks and gaps in it. It makes it awfully challenging to administer. So, okay, let's see. Heather is not here for community awareness. Who else is on that committee that can bring us up to date on what's going on with them? Who else on that committee that I'm not seeing?
This is Aaron. We've got Gaston and Travis here. So either one of you, if you'd like to give the report, or I can do it. It's up to you.
Travis,
I was not at the last meeting, so I cannot give an update.
That's Travis, that's a little bit like in law school when the professor would call on someone and they would say, I would love to recite. Unfortunately, I'm not prepared. And that doesn't go over well with professors, but we're going to let you go this time and let Gaston carry the ball.
Oh, Lord, it's a double hit, Aaron.
I've got you, Gaston. It's fun. So the majority of our last meeting was a conversation with the COA committee regarding potential outreach efforts and awareness and education efforts, either with historic district and landmark homeowners or with realtors. I would say, and with realtors, we're still exploring what our options are going to be. But we had a pretty productive conversation, lots of ideas about how we might do that. We've done some educational sessions with realty groups in the past. There was interest in getting our Instagram account going. I think primarily right now, Heather posts on Facebook and then passes that information along for Heather or for Gaston or Travis to post on Instagram. We discussed, let me see, I'm just scanning through my notes right now. A potential FAQ for the COA process through our social media programming. So very simple, sort of how we did May Preservation Month. Heather would drop small little questions, tidbits about Raleigh history on the social media to engage viewers. We would essentially have a smaller breakdown of simple questions regarding the COA process and highlighting successful projects. Simple things like fences to start that are easy to get your arms around. And then during this full discussion, we were filling out a Google Doc with all of our potential ideas. So just a reminder to community awareness and COA committee members here, we'll meet again on July 6th. So that's your deadline for dropping any other brainstorms you've had in that document. And we've had the website discussion on the back burner for the past 3 months or so due to the need to, this came forward and we prioritized Preservation Month activities as well. So we're hoping to get that back on the agenda soon and potentially invite the planning department's communications team to come and talk about the pros and cons for merging onto the city's website so that the committee can better understand what that'll look like and make a recommendation to the full commission. So that's where we are.
All right, thank you. And so, yeah, one of the issues left hanging, or at least left hanging by me, for COA is how to get the word out, because of our concern that we're working under an honor system right now for enforcement where the commission has the honor and the neighborhood property owners have the system, and a whole lot of stuff gets done without a COA and then it's quoted as precedent for the COA committee when it shouldn't be precedent at all. So we'll need to remember to follow up and track down that Google thing and think about how to get that accomplished. So anything else on community awareness?
Just just real quick, our emphasis, we were concerned that we weren't getting our word out to the realtors and to new residents who didn't know of anything about the history of Raleigh from the architectural historic preservation issue. So we were trying to figure out a way to package that material and to get it to them.
Yes, in fact, and if we can do that, whether it's by some vehicle like the welcome wagon, where we say, welcome to the neighborhood, and by the way, this is what you need to do, so that read this, and that, so the FAQ, and what we found in this meeting that we had with community awareness is that the folks on COA come at it from a somewhat different perspective and see these issues from the standpoint of us having to make judgments and enforcement, where community awareness is just educating more broadly on Raleigh and our various neighborhoods and landmarks. So we each need the other to get this done. And if the COA can help with the FAQs, it'll be, I think, a big help. Let's see, Katie, did you have your hand up a minute ago?
I did, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to give a quick update on the status of some of the Josephus Daniels press items that we had spoken about. We had a special meeting to discuss how we wanted to move forward with putting out possibly some information about how we came to our decision to de-designate the Daniels house. And with that, me and Heather have been tasked with coming up with some materials that we could use. I have drafted those. Heather is looking over them, and we're going to kind of co-edit. And we have a plan for how we want to move forward with a longer communication that would be appropriate to send to council or other municipal government groups, and then kind of medium-sized press release in the event that we need that, and then also some social media text as well. We kind of anticipate some more press on this with the impending demolition of the house, and so we are moving along with that. And probably by the next executive committee meeting, we'll have something more material to bring to the rest of the group for discussion. So
generally, folks, the idea was to be prepared with the press releases, statements, or documents if needed, and at the appropriate time make a decision whether to get ahead of it or how best to handle it, so that we avoid blowback from our involvement with that issue. So that's how that came to be. So then let's see. The next thing is, I lost my agenda here. Let's see, what's the next thing on here, folks? As I said, I lost my print copy.
Dr. Dix.
Oh yeah, and I don't know of anything to report on Dorothea Dix. Nothing new going on that we needed to weigh in on, of which I'm aware. Is anybody else? Tanya, is there anything that we need to do on Dorothea Dix?
No.
All right. So then then we move to news from the commission and staff reports. And somewhere in here, and I thought about bringing it up in community awareness because it may fit in that regard, but I'm thinking that it would be a good thing for us to nominate. There was a call from PNC for nominations for folks who are activities that ought to get some award at their upcoming annual meeting. And I sent out an email to some of you saying that I was inclined to think it was good community awareness for us to weigh in and nominate and make a nomination. And I threw out, for example, the Height House, that project, and we could nominate the project, we could nominate the owners, we could nominate the architect, we could nominate sort of a team of all the above. So I want to bring that up now to talk about whether we ought to do that. And the deadline was yesterday or something like that. But I did email Mike Howard to say that we were going to bring this up today. And he said, well, for that, his purposes, he would just treat my email as a place marker and then wait to see what we did about it. And so my suggestion is that we should bring some statewide recognition to our preservation efforts, and maybe the Heights House is a good one for that purpose. And so I'm asking what you all want to do about it. If we do it, then I would think that there will be some. We need some folks, a little bit of staff help out of somebody who has been involved in the COA, most likely, whoever, whether that was Aaron or Colette, and probably somebody, one or two people here, maybe a combination of COA and community awareness experience that could help talk about what was significant about that particular one if we think we ought to do it. I was thinking that for two reasons I brought it up. One, I think just more generally, we ought to try to get Raleigh projects recognized. Number two, I thought that to the extent we were having concerns expressed by Myrick about how we handled the Daniels house, that we would try harder to work with him and meet some of his needs for award recipients and some of the spade work associated with coming up with the information that would lead to making such an award. So that both things were in my head at the time, but I'll open it to discussion. What do the rest of you think generally?
I would be in full agreement with you, particularly on the Heights House project. I mean, it's in my neighborhood. I've had the opportunity to look inside of it several times, and it's they had like a photo shoot done when they first bought the building because the publisher thought it was like a really cool looking dystopian crumbling apart interior that made for a good photo background, and now they've got it. It's a really decked out, really nice bed and breakfast hotel. The difference is night and day. It'd be great to get them some exposure and also highlight, to your point, some Raleigh projects that are really worth getting statewide significance.
Further comment? I saw John Reese and Janine sort of nodding. Does somebody want to make a motion that we move forward with such a nomination? John Reese makes that motion. Is there a second? Kay Webb makes the second on the motion. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of that? Well, before we do that, I think we need to hear from staff on what your comments are on in general about doing these things, and then on practicality and feasibility and paperwork.
Hello, Tanya here. I think it's a great nomination, and the only thing I was going to add is who on the commission is volunteering to help fill out the paperwork.
All right, we're going to get the motion passed first, and then we will either have volunteers or a draft. So anyway, any discussion on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye, raising your hand. Okay, the motion carries. That's unanimous. Now, who would like to work on that project? All right, then I will. I'm willing to help, but I'll be gone. I'm certainly willing to help, and so I won't run from it, particularly since it was me that threw out the idea. But I think that we will need to pull in Travis. All right, Travis will help, and that'll help us from the community awareness side. Susan, Susan said she'd help.
I've written tons of grants. I'm glad to get involved.
All right, well, that's wonderful. That would be a huge help and a great way for you to assist Susan in the overall effort. But I'm going to draft John Reese to assist from the architectural side, and Travis from the communication side. And so it'll be the three of you on it, and I'll let, and I'm going to tap Travis as the chair of this ad hoc committee, if you want to, or project committee. And then if Gaston wants to change it next month, he can do that. But just to give us something for the present purposes. And y'all pull me in if you want, and not if you don't. It will be fine. Anything else from members of the commission? All right, staff, anything from staff?
Yes, sir. We have a couple things. I have two things. One is I just wanted to point out that the dates for the 2022 National Alliance of Preservation Commissions Forum has been set. It's July 13th through 17th in Cincinnati. The date is also in the events and CLG training opportunities portion of the agenda. But for those of you who may be interested, that way you can go ahead and put it as a tentative on your calendar, and we can, figure out who we can pay to attend as it gets closer. The other thing is a follow-up. So for those of you who have been on the commission for a while, you may remember a certificate of appropriateness to change out streetlights citywide in the historic overlay districts from several years back that came through. And at the time, the commission denied the change out primarily due to the light color of LEDs being not very warm in color. Since then, the jurisdiction over the need for a certificate of appropriateness in the right-of-way when there's not a building related has changed, so a COA is not needed. But I did get an update from the Transportation Department letting us know a couple things. The bad news is that the high-pressure sodium street lights are definitely no longer available and are going to get changed out. The good news is that Duke Energy Progress, Duke has now available a 3,000 Kelvin color temperature LED fixture option, which was the range that y'all were looking for. And the Department of Transportation will be authorizing Duke to convert the approximately 700 high-pressure sodium streetlights in the historic districts to the 3,000K LED in the near future. So this is just an FYI to let you know it's coming. And I sent emails to the presidents of both Boylan Heights and to the Society for the Preservation of Historic Oakwood.
It's going to be a bit different fixture housing?
It will be a different fixture housing. It'll still be a modern one. I can forward you the email if you want to see what it looks like. Yeah, it's
idea modern and my idea modern are old.
I mean, it's not really. It's just a different version of the Cobra head, basically, a little flatter. But I'll send it on.
Tanya, do you know, because we've already had several and growing replaced in Boylan Heights, and I'm sure in other HODs as well, to the brighter white LED light. Do you know if they'll also be converting those over to the 3,000 Kelvin LED?
That's a good question. I can verify. I believe yes, because there is not a desire to have different, have varying light, levels. You want some level of consistency for safety, but I will find out.
These old and new fixtures, these new fixtures do have, if you ask for them to do it, they have the ability to filter, what's the word I'm looking for? You can change the focus where the light goes. You can restrict it to a certain area if you want them to.
Okay, I think it is a good thing for us to be aware of this. And it sounds like we won and we lost on the issue. First of all, transportation didn't want to mess with us anymore on COAs, but they did hear us about the light color and the lot and so forth. So maybe we get something out of those efforts anyway.
Well, it was not transportation decision whether or not they need to get a COA. That was an interpretation made by the city attorney's office. But Colette has 2 reports.
Go for it, Colette.
Hello, everyone again. So first, I'd like to give you a status update on the rezoning cases that you heard last month. So the first one, which was for Glenwood and White Oak, Spartan Baptist, that is on the agenda for today's city council meeting. So if you'd like to see where their discussion heads, tune in today. The other application on Whitaker Mill, they are still, they have not been placed on a planning commission agenda yet. They're still waiting to meet some administrative requirements. So we'll let you know when that one moves forward. On a completely different note, we recently were informed that Representative Blumenauer from Oregon has introduced legislation to improve the federal historic rehabilitation tax credit. The legislation is called, let's see here, the Historic Tax Credit Growth and Opportunity Act of 2021. And one of the, it will increase the credit value for market volatility. It will potentially permanently increase the existing credit value from 20 to 30% for small rehabilitation projects. And it will also provide other revisions to the text of the rehabilitation tax credit. I don't believe this has made it very far yet in Congress, but this potentially, however it moves forward, this could be a good opportunity for you to use your advocacy ask. It's only been introduced in the House at this point, I believe.
Right. I would ask that you provide that information to all of us by email so that we can get it to our legislators and Congress folk that we know, and encourage them to work it into a reconciliation so it can get through. That could be a good thing, and to let them know we're supportive. That could be a good thing when they file one of those bills saying they want to quote improve something. I'm always wondering when they say improve, what do they mean? But if they're actually going to increase the credit, then that is improvement in my view. So we should try.
There is one representative from North Carolina who's listed as a co-sponsor. He's outside of the Raleigh area, but it is Representative Richard Hudson who has already signed on. And he's
okay, great.
8.
Yeah. Okay. But if you'll get that to me, I'm in touch with 2 of them for the Raleigh area. So I'll be sure to get, and I would think they'll be both of them will be interested in supporting it at least, and knowing that we're aware of it.
Well, definitely get that to you.
Okay, that's great. Okay, anything else? Katie, I'm going to skip treasurer's report since we already went through the budget items, unless you got something specific. We've talked about events and CLG training opportunities. That's what Tanya was just talking about. We've had discussion on newsletters and websites, I think. So what else, folks? Anything else from staff? All right.
No.
Well, then I'm going to do my my valedictory, if you will, and tell you that it's been a great opportunity for me to do this, but 10 years is enough. And so it was 6 before and 4 now. Plus I did 6 on the museum and Mordecai thing. And so I'm going to miss this, and maybe not all the 7:30s and 7:45s, but I really hate that we went this entire year without really being in the company of each other to mount anything. I would ask that you each drive forward on these projects we just finished talking about, and I would ask that you be bold. I detect a tendency for the commission members to wait to be led by the staff, and I detect a tendency of the staff to wait until there's push from the members of the commission. And so I would say for both ends of this, it's important that you push, because there is no private advocacy group for Raleigh history. We're it, and we're only private because of our 501c3 piece, but we do have that. And I think we have to recognize the realities that if we don't do it, nobody will. And so I would encourage you. I think a lot of good has been done, but it is going to be a ongoing battle as long as property values are exploding and Raleigh is growing, which is a good thing, but we need to remember where we came from and how we got to here. And so thank you all for all that you have given to this. Thank you all for the skills you bring. It's been wonderful for me to have an opportunity to, and I know I speak for Kay as well, the chance to be with you all, and the kinds of talents that you have been so different than what Kay had in her legal work or I had in my legal work. It's wonderful to get to know all these design and tech and community folk that we wouldn't have had a reason to know otherwise. So thank you for that. And unless there's something else, I will adjourn this meeting. Okay, thanks, folks. Nice work.
It's been a pleasure, Nick. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Tanya. I appreciate it. All right. I will declare this meeting adjourned, and we will see you all one more time at the COA. Take care now.
Thanks, Nick.
Take care. Bye.